afternoon, and welcome to the end of week 5 of the 6 weeks to flexible work and life success series. I'm Callie Williams Yost, and this series is just one part of a broader effort that we are undertaking to bring leaders, managers, teams, and individuals together to reimagine where, when, and how we work and manage our lives through this COVID crisis and beyond. Today, we're going to take a minute. We're going to step back and we're going to take some stock because it's pretty amazing what we've accomplished in the last 10 weeks collectively. And that's important. It's important to step back, reflect, give ourselves the credit that is due for taking control in many different areas in a surprising, innovative way so that we can then move forward. And that's what we're going to do today. But before we get started, I want to introduce my producer, Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, everybody.
So with that, let's get started. Let's talk about what we are doing right and take some stock, celebrate what has worked so that we can move forward to what is next from a position of success, which it has been for sure. But to start with, I want to hear from you guys. Let's just take a second. Let's take a few seconds and let's think about an example of something that either you feel you did or your organization did well over these last 10 weeks since the COVID crisis really started to hit in the most intense way. What have either you or your organization done that you could be proud of, that you can say, you know, we really rose to the occasion? Take a few seconds and just type your answer in the chat function, because I do want to hear from you at the end. I'd love to hear some examples of what that might look like. I'm going to give you a few seconds.
Nobody's responded yet, Cal. Let's see if we can get at least a couple before we move
All right.
on. Does anybody have anything?
Just reflect. It could be the smallest thing that you just want to give yourself credit for, your organization for. That would be great.
Okay, we got one person. So
all right,
we got
keep
two.
thinking
we got
as
two.
we go along.
Okay,
as we go along. Okay,
oh, here we go.
great.
They're going now.
Oh, good. Okay, good. All right. So I want to go back to something that I referenced in the first session, the first insight session. I talked about why this experience has been so overwhelming for people. The best way for me to describe it is to put it in context to what we typically do in terms of strategic work flexibility implementation. So typically, in an optimal way, in an optimal state of mind, you are going into an organization and you're doing a period of discovery. You're figuring out where the organization is, how, when, and where people are currently working and managing their lives. Where are those pockets of innovation that you can leverage? Where are the areas of resistance that you want to spend a little more time on? And you get everybody kind of on the same page and ready to then accept this new way of working. And that next phase involves training. Everybody's given training. So they're thinking about how, when, and where they're working the same way. They're planning the same way. They're executing the same way. They're coordinating with each other the same way. And then they're given a period of time to experiment with those new skills and tools together. And at the same time, you're aligning the rest of the whole ecosystem of the organization around that strategic flexibility so that it supports it and it can be optimized. Then when you're all done, you're looking back, you're gauging how things went, you're looking at the momentum that you built, and you can continue that. You have a plan to continue it, but then you're also looking where there are gaps and you come up with a plan to close them. So that is the optimal change process. In this particular situation, everybody was thrown immediately into pilot. That's where we all went. All of us collectively went to pilot at the same time. There was no discovery. There was no readiness building. There was no training. There was no alignment. There was just pilot, okay? So for the past 10 weeks, we've been learning as we go. It's been kind of in the deep end, learning to swim, and a lot has happened that has been positive. And I want to take a few minutes again today to just say, what did we do well? because this is now an opportunity to build on that success and move forward. So before we get going, I want to make this very clear. I am by no means saying that we do not have some major challenges going forward. We have a staggering amount of unemployment. Our economic output has taken a major hit. We still have a virus that is very real. We do not have a coordinating testing, tracking, treatment plan in place. And really, so that what that means is flexibility in where, when, and how we work is got to be front and center, is how we move forward to deal with a challenge that is very real and potentially going to have a second wave as we open things up and we move into the fall and winter. So that is truly a challenge. And also we still have 45 million school-age children who are not in childcare, they're normal childcare also. They are still at home. So again, all of these things are real, but we can address them, I believe, even more effectively if we are to step back and say, look at all of the amazing that we accomplished in these last 10 weeks. Because not only can we do it, we are actually doing it. And what does that look like? So to help us understand, again, what I think has gone very well as it possibly could in a crisis pandemic situation, is there has been a recognition that these elements of the infrastructure of flexible work, the technology, the work flexibility, the workspace, that all we're starting to see as a whole. I believe many organizations went into this with those being very siloed, not optimized in any way. And I do believe that is coming together. There is a recognition that this has got to be a combination of remote work, staggered schedules, alternating A and B teaming, redesigned workspaces on and off site, and technology all working together to allow us to get our jobs done, to run our businesses, to manage our lives, and to get our economy going again in the safest and healthiest way possible. That is what I am seeing, and I think that is what deserves some attention today to celebrate. And it's happening, which is great, in that there is truly this real-time reimagining of work and life as we work through this crisis for these past 10 weeks. I have seen people, they are doubling down and keeping it simple. They are starting with where they were, and they have moved so forward to a new level. And they've done that by not being so obsessed with perfection. They have just made it their intention to try to figure out how to work and manage the other parts of their life. And they've done this, and I've watched it as people have worked together to prioritize what's important, to communicate with each other, and to recalibrate, continue to take it up a next level when they're ready and leverage that learning. And a lot has been accomplished because of that. Now, I'm just going to start with, let's celebrate the remote part of it. And I want to emphasize, which we talked about on Tuesday, which is one of the traps of flexible work can be focusing myopically on one thing. And we have spent a lot of time talking about remote collectively, mostly because for the jobs that could have been done remote, they went remote. And even a lot of jobs that people thought they couldn't be done remote went remote and have allowed people to stay healthy and keep operating. And I think this is one of those narratives that it gets lost. There are a lot of the parts of the economy that have shut down, and that is a valid reality. But there's a lot of the economy that kept going and has continued to operate. And in many cases, it was because people went to remote work. How many people went to remote work? And this is what I want to just take a second to just marvel at, okay? According to Harris, and I'm using the Harris poll because I trust their research methodology, but according to the Harris poll, over half of all employed Americans, 51%, transitioned to working from home in the previous month. It's 51% of employed Americans. That means if we use the data, the most recent employment data, right before pre-COVID employment data, that there were 158 million people in the US employed. That means 80 million people started working from home, essentially in a very short period of time, like a week, transitioned over into remote work. 80 million people. That is a lot of people. And 27% of those, according to a Monmouth survey, said it was for the very first time. 22 million people, very, very first time. Now, I also want to throw in another data point here, which I think is a comparison, and I mentioned this on Tuesday, and I want to re-emphasize it. So there is a study that's been out there that's been quoted in a number of articles from a group of academics. They did a study that said only 37% of jobs can be done remotely. That's what they said. Now, if you look at how they qualified those jobs, I would argue that's not true. But we have seen if 51% of employed Americans ultimately said they work from home, there was a sizable percentage of jobs in there that people thought couldn't be done remotely that ultimately, at least to a certain degree, have been able to be done that way. So that's something to celebrate too, is that there was a really radical rethinking about what is possible in a remote and flexible way. Now, of those people,